before I forget, because I almost did again, but I didn't this time. 40 seconds, 40 seconds on the clock. All right, Joe, no worries. As long as you get them in reasonable time, you're good. We're going to talk about that at the end. Okay, let's move on. Let's get into the topic today. Topics. All right, so role of government, how it changes in the US economy. So first key point, very straightforward, very easy, something we've already talked about. We're talking about laissez-faire policies. Some will argue that a laissez-faire approach to government, to economics, especially economics, will promote economic growth, especially when there is competition involved. So the strongest advocates for laissez-faire policy say there needs to be competition in the economy, right? And that they oppose government intervention during economic downturns. So what that means is there are people out there that will argue hands-off approaches to the economy, when healthy competition is present, will ultimately promote long-term economic growth and success. And that even when the economy is not doing great, if you leave it alone, it will correct and fix itself. That's the argument a lot of people that are pro-laissez-faire make. And for the most part, I'm not an economist by any means, but you can see where they would make that argument. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of proof that supports what they're saying, especially when you have supply and demand and competition. But what's the problem with the Gilded Age and laissez-faire? What isn't present during the Gilded Age in the United States economy-wise? Like in major corporations and major businesses of the time, like Standard Oil, like your Carnegie Steel, competition, right? There's no competition. There's one oil company, Standard Oil. There's one steel guy, Carnegie, right? There's one of everything, and there are these huge corporations that run everything, right? The best way I can explain it is like if you look at cell phones, right? Everybody's trying to undercut each other in cell phones today, right? Apple makes this thing and then Samsung makes it and vice versa. And they go back and forth and one's cheaper than the other and blah, blah, blah. That's better for you, the consumer, right? Let the companies fight. The companies are supposed to fight, right? It's like the Godzilla thing, right? Let them fight. Companies fight, companies compete. It's better for you because they lower their prices or they improve their products or both, right? So that's how that's supposed to work. That's the argument behind laissez-faire. Leave them alone. Let them compete. Don't regulate them. If you regulate them, then they have no incentive to compete. That's at least the argument. The problem in the Gilded Age is there's no competition because everybody bought each other, right? So you need to regulate a little bit. And we're going to get into how that works in a second. We're not going to quite talk about regulations yet because they don't happen in the Gilded Age. They happen after. Our buddy Teddy Roosevelt doesn't show up till a little later. So I'll give you about 45 seconds. Get that key point down. If you already got it, great. Sit tight. We'll move on in a second. The basis of this argument is that, well, the whole point of this topic is that how much foothold does the government have in the economy? Like how much should the government say about the economy? How much should they be involved? And is that a new argument in the US? Is this the first time that politicians will argue about how much the government should be involved in the economy? Yes or no in the chat. Is this new? Is that question new? Hey, should the government get involved in the economy? Somebody tell me, either in the chat or you can come up here and say it. Is that a new question, a new thing? Is this the first time we're arguing about it in the Gilded Age? It's not new. You're right. It's a good answer. No, it's not new. Not at all. It is something that has happened long and long and long. So with that being said, let's move on. Some of the first people that argued about this stuff were Hamilton and Jefferson. What were Hamilton and Jefferson arguing about economically? Do you remember? What was their big disagreements? They had a bunch of them, but specifically about the
National Bank.
National Bank, solid, nailed it. That's what's up. So yes, the National Bank. They fought over the National Bank. Henry Clay's American system was another issue. Do you remember what the American system's goal was? One of the main goals of it? Because you remember it was a three-part system and it was all about improving something in the US. You remember what that was? Yes, no, maybe so. And you can tell me no if you don't remember. But what was Henry Clay trying to improve in the US. This was pre-Civil War infrastructure. Solid, nailed it, right? So there was arguments about that. Can the government improve infrastructure? So what do you need on this slide? You need to know that industry is changing quickly. And with that rapid change becomes an issue. Should the government help it or should the government leave it alone? Right? Should the government get involved and make sure the change happens fairly, or should the government leave it alone? And all you need to point out is that this isn't a new thing. There's always going to be something that the government argues about economically. You know what they're arguing about today, economically speaking? Think about it. Very, very modern problems. Not Bernie, not even stimulus checks is good. I'll give you stimulus checks. What else? Not COVID related. Something that they're still arguing about that has economic ramifications. Stimulus checks is super good. Right?
Minimum wage for...
Minimum wage is another one. Increased minimum wage, COVID release, not oil. Think cell phone apps. And think internet. Do we not know this one? This one might be a little too specific. Not money, but like net neutrality, right? Like app control. How much internet can you control, right? Like Obama wanted to make internet a utility, right? Like electricity. Like you can't regulate how much electricity somebody uses for the most part because it's something you need, right? So like that's another economic debate, but the stimulus checks is a really good one. That's a really, really good one. I hadn't even thought of that one because it's so new. And so is minimum wage, right? So there's always going to be fights about how much should the government get involved in the economy. It's as old as Jefferson and Hamilton. It's as new as Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? It's as new as those guys. It's been around for a long time. Distribution, so that's good and stuff, but that's not economic. So that's the only thing. Vaccines isn't economic, but stimulus checks and COVID relief is economic. So I'll give you another quick minute on here. Just basically define that. This is not define it, but explain it, right? With the rapid change in industry, how much should the government get involved? That is the question. Did I have a stroke? I did. Even though I know you weren't talking to me. All right, so I'll give you another 45 seconds and we're going to move on from here. Just point out, these are not new arguments. These arguments have been happening as long as the US has been a thing, and they will continue to happen. The issue will change, but the overall, hey, how much should the government get involved in the economy will always be around. There will always be something to argue about economically at the government level. 15 seconds. You need more time? Let me know. All right, let's move on. So, enough is enough. What's going to happen? Well, what are some reasons? And I want you guys, I'm going to give you a minute and a half solid. I want you to nuke this chat box. Like I want to fill it. Everything you think of, put it in there. What are some reasons the government should interfere in the economy during the Gilded Age? Go, get specific. Think of everything you can think of and type it in as you're thinking of it, one at a time. Just go, nuke that chat box. Minute and a half starting right now. Solid, yes. Gio, that's a very long question. It's a little bit depending on who you ask. So we can talk about it in period 7. We will talk about it because I'll give you my opinion. Solid one. Yes. Brian, yes. Emiliano, yes. Michaela, yes. Those are all really good. Keep going, guys. Let's go. Fill it up. Nuke that box. What do we got? Brandon, yes, but I need you to be more specific. Jay, that's good. 50 seconds, guys. Let's go. Come on. We can do better than this. We can fill in more than this. These are all really good. We're forgetting some super specific ones. Get as specific as you can. What else you got? Check your notes if you need to. Yes, Michaela, that's really good. That's one that was missing. And I'll start sharing these in a bit, and I'll put some up on the slide so you can what would be the word? Get a couple of these down. There's enough happening in the workplace during this era that people are going to be demanding changes. They're going to say, hey, you better, or please, or like do it right now, right, when it comes to interference. Gio, that's a good one. Last couple of seconds. Come on, we got a few more. Come on, we're missing some. I think we're missing some. Alex, you have to be more specific, but in a sense. Michaela, that's another really good one. Okay, so that's time. So a couple that I put up here, unsanitary working conditions, right? It's dirty, it's dirty and gross in the cities, it's dirty and gross in the factories. 12 to 14-hour work days, fix the work days. Unsafe working conditions, hey, machines chop off arms all the time. And lack of stable jobs. And then there's also child labor. So those are all really, really good. Somebody put lack of stable jobs here at the end, and I think that was Michaela, and that's literally on the slide, right? Those are all really good ones. Other ones people put were specific things about protecting immigrants and their jobs, right? Making them less vulnerable. Somebody else put the work, like regulating the owners of the factories, things like that. So all you need to do is put 2 or 3 of these in your notes, right? Put common people are demanding change in the economy or change in, are demanding government interference in the economy, and the reasons are blank, 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 right? Put like 2 or 3. You don't need to put them all, but put a couple. Just know that for these reasons and more, people are starting to say, hey, government, do something about this, right? Help us. You're the government. You're supposed to help us. Workman's comp is a good one. That's actually something that a lot of the labor unions will want. So I'll give you another 30 seconds. It's just brief, right? Just fill that in. And we'll get into it. That was really good work, guys. I appreciate y'all participating. Participating. I actually don't think this one's, I think this is just a tenement house. I don't think this is a factory, but it was kind of a cool picture not to put up anyways. All right, guys, let's move on. Lack of regulation. This is where the wealth of a nation comes from. So, laissez-faire economics, right, is the belief that a hands-off approach. We've said this a million times. Will this be up? Yes, it will. Hands-off approach will work out just fine. Leave it alone, it'll work itself out, right? We already said that at the top. That's what laissez-faire means. So, Wealth of Nations was a book written by Adam Smith, right? That guy right there, that's portrayed there. And he's the guy that creates laissez-faire. Laissez-faire isn't exclusively American. It's not something that a bunch of robber barons and captains of industry came up with. It's been around for a long time. And the argument is that supply and demand would allow for the invisible hand of the economy. That's a term, the invisible hand of the economy, to correct and right itself. However, it depends on competition. Who can break down supply and demand for me? Like, do you know what supply and demand is? Yes or no? And if you do think you know what it is, like, what do you think it means? Like, in the chat, you can put it, or you can come off mute and say it, or you can tell me here, like, however you want. But like, what is it? So what does that mean for the price? Right? And if there's a lot of supply and little demand, what happens to the price? Gets lower, right? So the best way I've explained this, and if you guys saw 8th graders yelling celery at me last year in the hallways, it's because I said, you guys remember the paleta guy that used to sell ice cream outside the school? Is he still there? He's not still there, right? No way he's still there. It was pandemic. You guys, I don't know if y'all remember that guy. But basically, if I opened an ice cream stand and all I sold was celery after school, is anybody going to want to buy celery from me? Probably not, right? Y'all don't want it when the cafeteria gives it to you. Why would you buy some from me? So the idea being that I have a lot of supply, right? I have a bunch of celery in this ice cream shop that doesn't sell ice cream for some reason. But there's no demand for it. So my prices are going to have to be low, right? I'm going to practically have to give this stuff away if I want to get rid of it. But if all of a sudden I'm selling celery and I find in the bottom of the cooler or whatever, you're selling celery at an ice cream stand, explain why and how. Because I can, Roman, because this is America and I have a dream of selling celery at an ice cream stand and I should be able to do that dream without being persecuted. Okay? I'm kidding. But so you guys are not eighth graders. You all know what this means already. So I'm going to give you a basic, more streamlined example of what this means instead of going into a low demand. What's up? Let me see. Somebody might have already put it in there. Yeah, Donovan pretty much nailed it. So iPhones. Best Buy has 12 new iPhones, right? And they all sell out. Are they going to drop their price or keep the price high when they get new ones? Keep it high, right? Because they're still selling them. What if they have like 30 crates of them and nobody's bought any? And they need to make room for the newer iPhone. What are they going to do with all their older iPhones? Put them on sale, right? Drop the price so that way people will buy them. That's supply and demand. But supply and demand depends on competition to an extent, right? You need to have a demand, so there needs to be competing interests, right? You wouldn't sell as many Samsungs if everybody bought iPhones and nothing else, right? There's a reason why there's competition. So the invisible hand of the economy depends on competition, depends on supply and demand. But business leaders in the Gilded Age didn't allow for competition. Why? What were they doing? What were business leaders doing? What did Carnegie do? What did Rockefeller do? What did all these guys do with their corporations and businesses? What did they do to their competitors? They bought them out, right? Either horizontal or vertical integration, right? Where you buy the competitors or you buy all the other businesses around it. But what did Gilded Age business owners do? They bought out other companies and they made it to where they were not competing with anybody. They were the only game in town. So because of this, you could argue that Gilded Age business people did what to the laissez-faire approach? What did they do to it? Did they follow it correctly or did they kind of alter it to their own means? Pretty simple question, right? Did they follow it or did they alter it a bit? They altered it, right? They changed it. They made it benefit them and maybe not everybody else. Maybe at the expense of others. Actually, not maybe, I'll say it, at the expense of others. All right, so what do you need for the slide? Know where laissez-faire comes from. Mention Adam Smith and Wealth of Nations. Point out that it depends on supply and demand, competition, and that the invisible hand will fix it. It's funny. And point out that Gilded Age business owners did not compete with other businesses because they bought everybody out. They made it to where competition wasn't a thing. It could be, could be. We'll go another minute and change on here and then we'll move on. About a minute left, minute and 8 seconds. Again, no regulation, but it led to some troubles. "45 seconds. Make sure you have this info down." Yeah, money is not so. Best way I've heard it described is money doesn't buy happiness, but it can be a down payment on some if you use it right. Still need other stuff, but helps. Doesn't hurt, for sure. All right, about 10 seconds, and then we are moving on. All right, so government help. Financial panics were present in the Gilded Age. They were not something that hadn't happened. They'd happened before, they will happen after. However, the government did little to nothing to help people during these times. The bread lines were full. A bread line literally where you line up free bread because you need something to eat. So the bread lines are full. The government did very little to help. During the Panic of 1893, President Grover Cleveland did almost nothing to help. The government didn't even get involved during that financial panic. These photos and that portrait are from the Panic of 1893. People filling the streets, getting into bread lines, trying to find something to eat because everybody's broken. The economy's collapsed, right? You guys remember the financial panic thing, right? I don't need to explain it. Yes, no? Because I can explain them again really quick if you need to. Could I get some yeses or nos? Yes, explain it. No, don't. Because I can explain what a financial panic is one more time. Yes? Okay. So I need another somebody. Can you see my whiteboard there behind me? Yes? Okay. Tell me if what I'm doing goes off of the screen. But so this is the economy. Can y'all see that? Going normally, right? This is an economic depression where it drops a little bit. That's a panic. Can they see that? No? What about now? Right there? Okay. So follow along with me. Straight line, as straight as I can make them, bad at making lines. Regular economy. Dips a little bit, depression. Flat down, panic. Does that make sense? Zoom, does that make sense? Can we see that? Yes? Okay. So that's a financial panic. That's when literally no one sees it coming. Nobody sees it coming. It's like, it's like an RKO. It comes out from out of nowhere. It's impossible to notice. Nobody catches it. Makes a big fat mess. Everybody goes broke. That's a financial panic. It's kind of like a depression is slow. Depression happens slowly and it lasts longer. Not necessarily. You can feel the ramifications of panic forever. I'm not an economist. But a depression is something that you can potentially see, and panics can lead to depressions because they are longer lasting. But the panic itself is just flipping a switch. It's like a light switch. It goes off and on. So, a court decision that you don't need to know the name of, so I'm not even going to name it for you, was made where states could not regulate railroads. So basically they're telling the states, hey, you can't regulate railroads, the government has to. But the federal commission that was put in place to regulate railroads was super weak. And so basically railroads kept operating without being regulated. So the government literally does nothing throughout the entire Gilded Age. The one thing they tried to do doesn't really work. So the government literally does nothing to regulate businesses that way. So just keep that in mind. You need to know Grover Cleveland didn't do anything. You need to know that the Railroad Commission doesn't do anything. Basically, the government doesn't really help. When it comes to helping the people, government, not a big fan. Not a big fan of helping the people in the Gilded Age. They think that the laissez-faire thing will work. Plus, they're hearing the interests of big business owners. So I'll give you about another minute and then we'll move on. We're almost done. $30 seconds, and then we're going to move on. Government not doing a great job of helping during the Gilded Age. It's the basis of it. Financial Panic, 1893. It's a big one. We're almost at Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. That's next unit. I'm super excited. It's my favorite president. I only say it every chance I get, right? All right, let's move forward. So key point 2, last key point of the day. Foreign policymakers increasingly look outside U.S. borders in an effort to gain influence and control over markets and natural resources, specifically in the Pacific Rim, in Asia, and in Latin America. That's where they're looking. So we're getting to the point, we're knocking on the doors of imperialism here, where American business owners and some government officials, mainly because they're working in interest of those business owners, are looking to other parts of the country that they can, for lack of a better word, exploit and use to make more money, whether that's through natural resources, whether that's through opening up markets to sell them things. But they're looking for that. Business owners are looking for that. And so are the was the term government people. So the government is considering getting involved in the economy, but only because it's potentially going to make everybody a lot more money. When I say everybody, I mean the officials and the business owners. Give you about a minute on this key point. Actually, I'll give you a little more than that. Minute and a half on the key point, and then we'll move on. About a minute left on the clock. Make sure you have this down. It's your last key point of the day, and then we are moving on. Almost done today, guys. Almost done. $30 seconds. Make sure you have this down. If you still need it, grab a screenshot so we can move forward. Yep. All right. So interest in foreign markets. I'll tell you about the political cartoons in a second. So business leaders work with policymakers to get involved in foreign markets through the newfound tool of diplomacy. Hey, let's go negotiate. Let's set up business interests. Let's set up markets. Let's annex lands. Yes, I said annex lands. So the government only got involved in business and the economy, apparently, it seems, during this era, when it was time to make money, but almost never get involved when it's time to regulate businesses. That's where you hear the term big business, right? This is a Gilded Age era portrait, I believe, of big business. And regulation of big business would not occur until after the Gilded Age is over. That's where this trust busting Teddy Roosevelt comes in, right? These are two, what would you say, different portrayals of the government and how they work with big business or not. Well, actually, this one's just big business, but it's ideas of different opinions on how the government works, right? This is just a few years later, because Roosevelt's right after the Gilded Age, right? Like if you would argue, you can argue he's the end of the Gilded Age, his presidency, his the start of it anyways. And this is how the government's seen as dealing with trusts and businesses. Whereas before, this is big business, just kind of doing whatever they want, doing their thing, right? You see interest on war loans, profits from war supplies. This is very much a late imperial era. I said Gilded Age, but this is more like an imperial era, imperialist era US portrayal of big business. So we'll get into all that in a bit. So I'll give you about a minute. Just note specifically that middle bullet point and specifically the top bullet point. And regulation will not occur till post Gilded Age. It will be till after the Gilded Age. So I'll give you about a minute and a half. Then we got one more slide to go, and we will talk about what we are doing for the end of class. A minute left on the clock. If you need more time than that, let me know. $30 seconds. All right, we're gonna move on. All right, so I'm going to give you two examples and you need to name them both because they're both really important. Examples of diplomatic regulation, as I like to call it. So capitalists, for example, really strongly favored the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarch. So the reason Hawaii is a state is because business owners wanted to own those islands. So US-backed business people supported the overthrow of the monarch, and then that was in 1893, and then 6 years or 5 years later, the US will annex the Hawaiian Islands as a state. New markets open up, foreign markets, now US markets, it makes people money. That's why it was done. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So anytime there's potential for a foreign market, whether it be Japan, whether it be China, whether it be Hawaii, whether it be places in Latin America, American business owners are going to hungrily look at them and want them. Another one to write down and point out is the open door policy between China and the US. This only goes from 1899 to 1900. It will lead to equal trade with China. And part of why that goes away is because Europe's going to get involved and split up China. It's going to be a whole big mess that we'll talk about next unit. So just write down for now, open door policy, 99 to 1900. So I'll give you about 2 minutes because I need you to get pretty much everything on there. And then we will move forward. Pretty much, that's pretty much what it is. It's the potential for the foreign market. That's why American companies are really excited when they see it, right? It's outsourcing stuff, it's finding natural resources, it's just selling them things in general. It's all sorts of reasons. But yes, American companies get really excited at that prospect. You could argue they still get excited at it, but back then it was like the Wild West, literally, even though it's not literally the Wild West. About a minute and 20 seconds left. Then we'll move on to what we're doing today. Should be fairly easy with a little bit of lemons for squeezing. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. It's Friday. About a minute left. If you need more time than that, let me know. That's the Hawaiian monarch, by the way, that was overthrown. I forget her name, but she was overthrown in 1893 by American business-backed means. American businesses basically paid the bill. And once she is overthrown, the US will annex the Hawaiian Islands. That's where they come by 1898. So pretty quickly. About 20 seconds. If you need more time, let me know, because otherwise we're going to move on. Because we're moving on. All right, so moving on. Exit ticket time. So everybody go into Google Classroom. I am going to post the exit ticket right now. Do not leave the call. I need you in here because I got to talk to you real quick. Then I'll let you loose for the exit ticket. So how are we at? That should be posted already. Let me make sure. All right, so everybody on the call, just so you know, and I'm speaking to some of you that are in here right now, some of you that are not, but hopefully the ones that are in here will hear this. I have been putting in grades today, and a few things that I noticed a bunch of people were missing that shouldn't be missing because it's really easy stuff. One is the 2 assignments from when I was out. A bunch of you are missing that stuff, like more than the normal amount that don't turn stuff in. And those are easy hundreds. Did you do it? Did you put some effort? Easy grade, right? The later it gets, the less like if you turn in the first one already, that's not 100 anymore, guys. That's passing, but it's something, right? If you turn in the one from this week, you can still get full credit for it. You turn it in before Monday. Same for the exit tickets from this week. If you're missing exit tickets, turn them in before Monday, you'll get full credit. I get it, it's online, you forget, you have stuff to do, you work, but you got a week basically, right? If you're missing more than the ones from this week, message me on Teams, I'll tell you what you can do to catch up. Because there's a gross amount of you that have a bunch of orange flags on PowerSchool that will turn into zeros if it keeps going up by what's it, progress report time. Those are not grades. That orange flag means I don't have it, it's a 0. It's only an orange flag out of sympathy for you, so that way y'all don't have a bunch of zeros in there. But they will turn into that if you don't turn it in. So if you're missing stuff and it's more than a week old, message me on Teams. I'll tell you what to turn in. I don't expect you to do 15 exit tickets backtrack. So let me know if you're missing stuff. The exit ticket this week, really simple. All you need to do is put your names, read that prompt, give me a thesis statement. Not a full thesis, a thesis statement. Make it your own. It will count as its own grade. Did you get points for a thesis, right? I'm going to grade it with the AP rubric. Is it a solid thesis? Can you argue? That's it. So make a thesis statement about that prompt. That's it. That's the exit ticket. I gave you 22 minutes to do that and to double check and make sure you're not missing work. So make sure you're not missing work. Some of you, I'm looking at your names in this call and you are missing a bunch of work. So not everybody, some of you. Some of you are missing a couple of things. Some of you are missing a bunch. So if you're missing weeks old work, let me know. If you're missing the stuff from this week, finish it. It's really easy. Especially the stuff from when I'm out. The in-class assignments tab on Google Classroom, those are easy grades. The second one from this week is just like 8 questions about a Heimlich. So it's easy stuff, guys. But that is it. So make sure you have that done. Stay in this call for a few more minutes. Make sure you get that exit ticket in. Once you have it in, you are good to go. I will be here if you have any questions about missing assignments or about the exit ticket. Just the thesis. So just the statement. So it should just be the argument you're going to make. Doesn't have to be the full intro. Did I put full intro? It shouldn't be the full intro. Just give me your argument. Like make the argument. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Like the answer part. That's all I need. Just the thesis. Don't give me the full intro paragraph. It's Friday. Let's just do a thesis. Just the statement. Even though I never do just the statement, do it this time. So other than that, guys, have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday. But again, I'll be here to answer questions about missing assignments or about today's exit ticket for those of you that are caught up. Yeah, all you got to do sometimes is click the mark. For those forms, all you got to do is click mark this done and I get your form. But if you submitted the form, double do it just in case because I'm not sure. Yeah, I did it. But I'm not sure if I put it in PowerSchool or not. So, because when I check them through forms. So sometimes you don't mark it, but your grade is still in there. But sometimes it doesn't show up. Google Classroom's weird. So double check, make sure. Try to always mark them as done. If I did the 119, sure, I can. And I haven't sent in the grades through Google Classroom, guys, because I've been doing a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't mean I don't grade them. Usually I open them in forms. See you, Roman. Have a good one. Emiliano, I do not have your assignment from 119. So what you might want to do is go double check, make sure you did it, because I don't see it on there. So it is showing up as missing for me. You might have just forgotten to turn it in, because when it's a Google Doc, you need to turn it in. And when I look at your doc, though, it looks blank, so I just don't think you did it. So you might want to do that really quick. That's like an easy 5-minute assignment. The one from last week, double check. Have a good one. All right, guys that are still in this call, I'm going to go ahead and end it. If you have any questions, reach out to me on Teams. I'm still available. But just so I can get the video uploaded a little sooner, I'm going to end this Zoom. So have a good one, guys. I'll see you all Monday. Have a good weekend.